Accidental Prime Minister. Chapter 17. Rocket Man. Joe burst through the doors at Downing Street and threw off his soggy coat and massive hat. He was finally starting to feel like his old self again. And it felt good. "Jenkins! I need Jenkins!" Joe yelled in his biggest, boomiest voice. "Oh, what is it, sir?" Jenkins puffed, running into the room. "Jenkins, I've been a complete fool and it's time to make things right. Fire up the jetpacks. We need to get AJ. "Very well, sir. Initiating jetpack takeoff sequence right away." In no time at all, they were flying high above London. Joe spotted AJ's house down below and signalled Jenkins to follow him. A loud thump, a snapping of wood, and several loud squeaks later, Joe and Jenkins were hanging from the tree in AJ's front garden. "Are we down?" Jenkins asked, his eyes still tightly shut. "Sort of," Joe said, removing a woodpecker from his hair. It just so happened that they were clinging to a branch opposite AJ's bedroom window. He was sat at his desk, staring at Joe and Jenkins' open mouth. "AJ's mum's gonna kill me," Joe muttered. Oh, indeed. "My mum is going to kill you!" AJ shouted, opening his window and leaning out. "That's her apple tree you just ruined." AJ was glaring at Joe angrily. "Look what you've done! You've ruined my tree!" AJ's mum screamed as she came running out into the garden. "Oh, Mrs. AJ, I've always hated that thing. It's supposed to be an apple tree. I've only ever had one apple in 20 years. Thanks, Joe. You did me a favour. Now I can get you boys anything. I've got a jalfrezi on the go. Would you like some?" "How about a ladder?" Jenkins asked, one eye open just to peek. "Oh, yes, of course. Where are my manners?" 20 minutes later, they were all sitting in AJ's front room. Joe and Jenkins were picking twigs and leaves out of their hair while AJ was perched on the edge of the sofa, looking at his feet. AJ's mum tutted loudly, breaking the awkward silence. "Oh, this is ridiculous, you two. Don't you have anything to say to each other?" Joe coughed to clear his throat. "AJ, I'm really sorry for saying all those things to you." "Mum," AJ started. "You can tell Joe to stick his apology." "AJ!" his mum snapped. "That's all right, Mrs. AJ," Joe said. "I deserve it. I said some bad things to AJ, things that were hurtful." "And lies," AJ butted in. "And lies," Joe agreed. "Truth is, I couldn't have been Prime Minister without you. I wouldn't want to be Prime Minister without you. I certainly can't fly a jetpack without you, and I wouldn't have taken part in the world's biggest high-five-a-thon without you. I'm so sorry, AJ, and I need you back on my side." Joe stood up and put his hand out to AJ to shake. "You've got to be kidding me, right?" AJ said. "Shaking hands is for squares. I only high-five these days." AJ grinned and jumped up for a high-five. Joe jumped up to meet him, but misjudged it and high-fived AJ's forehead instead. Felt so good to have his best mate back. There was a ring at the door. "Joe, your mum is here," called AJ's mum from the hallway. Before Joe could answer, his mum rushed in. "I saw the jetpack and heard the crash, so I figured you must be in town. Do I take it you two are friends now?" Joe and AJ nodded. "Oh, thank goodness for that." "Mum, I saw you in that factory. When did you start working there?" Joe asked. "Oh, a few days ago now. I needed a job, and it's not as bad as all that." "Mum, I'm sorry. You belong in the park. I've really messed up, but I'm sure I can fix it. You'll help me, won't you, AJ?" AJ nodded eagerly. "Wait a sec," Joe said, glancing at his watch. "Why aren't you at school?" "I got expelled." "What?" Mr. Brooks is well into this anti-silliness thing. No one's allowed to joke or smile anymore. Although, since the anti-silliness league started up, he's never looked happier. AJ sighed. "I hate to admit it, Joe, but I'm bored." "Right, I think it's time we did something about Violetta and her anti-silliness league, but first, we need to get back to Downing Street." While they were getting ready to leave, Jenkins' phone beeped with a message. "Ooh," said Jenkins, reading the screen. "It seems that Violetta is organising a vote of no confidence in you, sir. She's making a play for the leadership. She can't do that. I can explain to the people that I had a crisis of confidence, but I'm okay now. People who love fun and people who hate it can live in harmony. We can find a way. I'm afraid she's already done it, sir. May I be frank? Only if I can be Kevin, AJ laughed. Sorry, too soon, but man, it feels good to be back in the game. Sir, Jenkins persevered, ignoring AJ. Pains me to say this, but I'm afraid there may be no way to beat her. Violetta is a shrewd political player, and she's been one step ahead of us from the beginning. I've seen her type before. She's obsessed with power, and there's nothing she won't do to get her grubby hands on it. The park thing had given her a chance to get her claws in. But everyone hates her, Joe exclaimed. Why would they want her as Prime Minister? A lot of people are scared of her and ultimately will do as she tells them. Sir, if we had more time, perhaps we could have done something, but her anti-silliness league has grown too powerful. What do you think I should do, Jenkins? Sir. Joe, I think it's time for you to consider your position. I think you should tell her you're resigning and you're going to make her the next Prime Minister. Joe looked at Jenkins, his mum and AJ, the most important people in his life and the ones he had sworn not to let down. He had just decided to make things right, and now he might never have the chance. Joe gulped. Jenkins, you've been the best advisor a Prime Minister could ever had, and I trusted you 100%. Can you set up a meeting with Violetta first thing tomorrow? I think that's wise, Prime Minister. I'll let her know right away. And AJ, I was wondering if you had your mobile computer and your wireless telephone here. My laptop and my phone, you mean? Yeah, why? I wonder if we may spend some time working on Joe's speech. Perhaps you could help? Jenkins leaned in and whispered something to AJ and Joe. Joe and AJ looked at each other and then nodded to Jenkins. Okay, let's work on it together, Joe said, with a steely determination.